We are voting on the budget.
Oh, it's just one of them.
Like, not
Okay,
looking
we
at my
have
phone or
to
anything.
just be in session. Personnel litigation.
Right.
That's good on the agenda.
You ready for that? Tuesday, May 12, 2026 meeting of the Carlton School District Board of Directors is called to order. Mr. Baker, would you mind leading us in the pledge tonight? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Apple?
Here.
Director Evans? Here. Director Boba? Here. Director Gear? Here. Director Hunter?
Here.
Director Smith?
Here.
Director Pushkart?
She's not able to be here tonight.
Director O'Brien?
She's not able to be here tonight.
Director Schreiber?
Here. I'll report that we had an executive session prior to this meeting where we discussed personnel matters and potential litigation. And I'll turn to Dr. Craig for the superintendent report.
Thank you, Director Schreiber. And as in the spring of every year, and as we have been doing our past several work sessions, as we discussed the annual budget, we recently went through the audit of last year's budget, and Mr. Bilby has guided us through the process of revenues and expenditures for the 2026-2027 operating budget. This evening, he's going to take a look and review some of the information that we've already talked about. We'll cover those topics relatively briefly, as the board has already been apprised of those issues. So what we're looking at right now is the proposed final budget. The proposed final budget, once adopted, is posted on our district website for a period of 30 days. Prior to our June 16th legislative meeting where we look to adopt the final budget. So not only will it be posted online, it will also be posted in all of our district offices. So at the high school, at the elementary schools, a copy of the proposed final budget will be available for public inspection. So turn things over to Mr. Bailey for his report on the proposed final budget.
I should always give you my introduction because we're going to cover everything to say. So basically, as Dr. Fire said, tonight, this is really the final major board action that has to be completed to satisfy the Act 1 budget timeline requirement, which is to pass the proposed final budget that has to be put out for 30 days for the public to look at. And then what we need to do is, at that point, when you look at this budget, it is a very good representation of the final budget, but it is by no means the final budget. So when you look at this, you see and say, okay, well, this looks terrible, or this looks good, this looks good. It's good change. But one thing that I want you to be aware, even though we might go through a quick, short presentation, we do have another Finance Committee meeting in June where the final budget, we'll dissect it, we'll go over the 5-year plan, we'll go over everything, answer all of your questions that you have, so that you're absolutely comfortable with what we have placed into the budget and what we're going to possibly have to ask as far as moving forward with it. So moving forward, the proposed final budget. So this is the numbers that we have. Our revenue is $39,554,362. Expenditures are $39,917,145. So that is showing a reduction in our fund balance of $362,782. So with that said, the beginning fund balance at the beginning of this July 1st, we're expecting $9,994,655. And then at the end of June of 2027, we're anticipating an ending fund balance of $8,831,872. So as I showed you there, it shows right now a utilization of fund balance of 362,782. That number most likely will be changed. So don't worry about that at this point. I just want you to be aware that the budget that we have right now and prepared and gone through, it does show that. Any questions on that? All right, a couple months ago, I showed you this when we went through the revenues. Basically, the takeaway of this is to show that, the local sources are 64% of our budget, state is 32% of our budget, and the federal sources are only 5%. This number pretty much stays the same year after year after year. It really doesn't make any difference or changes in it. So this is updated with the new numbers. So everything that I show you is updated with the new numbers, what we are approving tonight. But once again, it's not the final. You've seen this, the last meeting that we talked about, same thing. This budget does have the same amounts. We have 94% of the money that is budgeted in this is going to go directly towards the kids who are supporting the kids. So there really isn't an adjustment at all. Might be a little bit higher than what we showed previously, but this will always be our goal, is to make sure that the majority of the money that's flowing is going to go directly to the kids. Any questions on this? That's it. Go ahead. Expenditures, same thing. I just updated it with the newer numbers. Personnel costs, 66.7%. Once again, just like with the revenues, that number is always going to be our highest expenditure that we're dealing with. Constantly dealing with the contractual wage increases. The medical piece rate right now is decreasing, but was 0.01%, so it's a very slight decrease, but it's still something that we have to take notice of every year. And then debt, of course, increased, which we all know why that increased because of the Carnegie tuition. We talked to that in the last meeting about the charter schools, and even though we did get some relief from the charter school bill that was passed, it's still a very, very major part of our expenditures that we have to face every year. And then transportation, once again, that is a big cost, not only for our local students, but also for the students that we have for those that are outsourced, those that are going to the different parochial schools. So really, when you look at these numbers, and honestly, I basically probably take this pie chart year to year to year to year, and it's pretty much the same. So nothing out of the ordinary here that I see. Questions? So here's the big ticket numbers, the assessment and the millage. Due to the CLR, our real estate assessments have decreased by $3.9 million. So
What's the
the CLR is our common level ratio that we have discussed in past meetings. We've even discussed it in the board where the assessments, big companies are appealing, housing are appealing their assessments. It all has to do with, what's the year that the last assessment? 2012. So that decrease, that 3.9 million, is huge for us. It's very, very minor. That might be just 1 or 2 months for a Montour or Chartiers or the bigger schools, but still the decrease of the assessment takes away money that is available for us to use. So our total assessed value right now is at $729,034,415. That number, I will check that prior to the budget to make sure that there hasn't been any changes up or down. The idea is that I have the latest and most accurate numbers so that we can accurately put in our revenues. The homestead reduction allocation, this is what's also known as the gaming money that the state gives to the districts. Our allocation, just like last year, was $972,084. We had 3,117 people apply for that homestead. reduction. And basically what that's going to result in is a reduction in their amount that they're going to be paying by $311.87. So it's not very much, but at least it's something that is a give back, to the those that have actually put in for this homestead. So with this could change. So this is not final. We don't usually like to talk about this until the very final, but I just wanted to be straightforward with you. This proposed final budget does include a 1.254 mil increase, which is 4.4%, which is our index level that we're allowed to increase to. So with that, it will raise our millage rate to 29.7627. We all know from discussions of what exactly has happened, and I'll show that we'll talk about it in the next slide. But this is not final, so don't go out and spread it to the world that we're raising it, because who knows? Budgets pass, in the state, and they say we're giving everybody $10 million extra. It's not gonna happen. But that's what I mean. We just want you to know, and we want to be transparent, that for me to be able to get to where we are in this budget, we have to raise the rate by that 1.25. Questions, concerns?
So the real estate assessments increased by 3.9 million.
Right.
Is that pretty evenly spread across homes or residential property, or is it like apartment buildings,
I would
commercial
say
buildings?
there was a couple, I know Busy Beaver was one. I would say it's a mixture. It's a lot more homes, because obviously we have a lot more homes than we do businesses. So, and that's why I was saying with the CLR, we're not getting affected as much as other districts are that have the
Some of
big
these
malls and so, yes, but like I said, any little decrease is a decrease to the amount of revenue that we're allocated. So it hurts the district, no doubt.
Keith, just to put it in perspective, the $4 million is less than 0.5%, or about 0.5% of our overall assessment. So it's not a huge.
It's not a huge, no. And honestly, when we
10% of revenue.
but we see, just even with our payouts, what we had to refund the taxpayers for their assessments, it really, 1 year, the first year, I think the most that we paid back was maybe $200,000. But then it's gradually gone down to the point where this year we have very few appeals that are still hitting us. And like I said, talking to my counterparts, they're getting hit by $6, $7, $8, $9 million. And that's really big crucial, especially to a lot of the bigger districts that have not raised taxes year after year after year after year, are now all of a sudden finding themselves in a revenue crunch. So, good and bad to it, but anytime there's a decrease, it's bad for us, and we have to take that into consideration and adapt to it. Any other questions? So with that said, this budget does have some investment initiatives that we have put into the budget to help us move forward, and it also reflects a lot of the increases that you're going to see in the budget. Employee contract negotiations, honestly, that is one of the bigger ticket numbers and the biggest unknown that I have right now. And that's why I said that this could change. This could be one of those ones where it could make a big difference as far as if we get one, the contract settled, and two, how much we settle for. So it's one of those tough things where we as administrators have to say, how much do we need to put in? We don't want to put too much, we don't want to put too little. So it's that fine line. So that's really all I can say about that. It's really right now our biggest unknown, and honestly, I don't know where we're at as far as, is it going to be done before the budget? I don't know. And then, of course, the bond issue, we all know, one thing with the bond issue is we were able to increase our millage a couple years ago, knowing that this was going to happen. So that took a big bulk of the increase away from us as far as we knew when we proposed this. So that still hit to the budget because we still have to, to show it, but we prepared ourselves for that. And then the other increase of staffing we're putting in. I don't know if Dr. Ryder or Dr. Hiller, or anything that you want to add or just.
Sure. I think we talked briefly about the increased enrollment of students with special needs, and whenever we have an increase of students with special needs, especially in this particular case, that line item there are those where we have to outsource those services, and those are held at different facilities, so it also takes into consideration not just the tuition, and we've talked about tuition in some of those organizations could be anywhere between $40,000 a year to $60,000 a year in some cases, $108,000 a year per student, and then coupled with transportation to get students to those locations. In many cases, they're independent vans to transport the students, which can be expensive as well. Rise in needs at the elementary level for special education also, so that's in-house services, that's an additional teacher. And then also related support staff to help staff that classroom. We've also talked about the BCIT teacher here at the junior senior high school, and that's to help deliver additional instruction to meet state requirements now that require financial literacy coursework. And then our growing population with English language learners, and with that, an additional staff member that we outsource that through the AIU. So when we take those items and combine them all together, it takes up a bulk of the increases that we're expecting for next year, along with other standard types of increases that we've forecasted anywhere, depending on different contracts that we have with providers of transportation and different things, anywhere between 2.5%, 3.5% increase in rates as far as outsourcing other types of services that we provide and other employee contracts.
Any other questions on this?
Random question, but did we build extra money into our transportation money for fuel costs for next year?
So fuel is in our contract with Monarch, is built into that agreement. So Monarch actually pays the fuel cost. Unless the cost of the fuel goes over a certain threshold, then we take on a portion of it. So
It's already going over the threshold.
yes, and that's going to be
So yes, we have taken that into consideration, and that's, you're right, that's one of the things that you wouldn't normally think about.
Could be huge.
Right, it could be huge, right?
Diesel is that's
yes.
And one thing that's good too, with being in the Allegheny County or Allegheny Unit Consortium, they've locked in prices so that it is hedging a lot of the higher costs right now. So it's a benefit that we did get into that. So we're not paying the full sticker price that's out there right now. So that is one good thing, but you're right, it's built in the contract. We know that anything over a certain amount is going to be
so
charged
you
back.
know, put a number in that feels reasonably safe.
Yep, absolutely. Any questions?
Keith, on page 2, revenues.
Yep.
The earnings from investment, $700,000. Do you have it in that category because it's sitting, that it's money that we're making off of taxes that's sitting?
This is money, correct, this is money from investments, or bank accounts, investments that I've made throughout the year. So yes, it is.
So that's the
money off
reason
of-
why it's in that
Correct.
section.
And right, and it's always good to see and to show, how is, the financial system, the banking going, to see, that $700,000, that's a benefit to us.
Sure.
Sure. When the economy is good. So, yes, I think it's something noteworthy to show, and also a reflection on the district too, of how well we are investing. Because if we weren't investing, you're gonna see a lot lower number, or if the economy is lower. So it's kind of like, kind of back to, the district saying, we're taking the money that, not only are we getting, from the taxpayers, but we're taking that money and we're trying to grow it.
Good,
And that's what we're doing.
good. And then at the bottom, the capitalized interest, what's the percentage rate that we're getting?
That was a very low rate. I have to
Just
look and see. It was part of the bond issue. I'll have to
So does it stay the same?
it was only a small amount of money. That what we did when we talked about the bond issue is, whenever we looked at it, we didn't need to have a situation where we're budgeting $800,000 and all of a sudden we have to go up to $1.5 million. So we needed something to gap it a little bit for us. So that's where when Alicia came and we talked about the capitalized interest as just something that we can step up and help. So it's something that we only have 3 years to use it, and I would get that number for you. We can talk about it, and it's a very, very low number. I mean, it's within, I can't remember, one was 4%, 5%, I can't.
I was just curious.
Yeah, it's very, very low. So, I mean, it was one of the things that assisted us and helped us to bridge that gap, because this would have been a lot worse if we didn't have that little extra money to bridge that gap to work that.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the investments and initiatives or anything else about the budget before we move on to the next? Yeah, that page there. So what that is, and I will usually give that to you every time we do a major budget. That is the summary page of my major report. So what that basically shows you is it gives you a historical of where we've been, and then it also shows you the current budget. And what that's really used for is to show you changes in fund balance, if there's any deficits year to year, just so that we can kind of it's a snapshot of the 5 years history. But I think one of the things that we really need to look at is the number down at the bottom where we break down the fund balance. Because we all know, we're not sure all that's going on, but we're only allowed to have unassigned 80% of our budget to be unassigned. So you're going to see where I take that one number of whatever it is, 9 million, and I have to break it down to say, okay, this percentage is unassigned, and then the other two amounts we assign to different things. And this is another thing where, when we talk about using the fund balance, we prepared for that. So we put money away over the years to offset higher future costs, offset higher personnel costs, different debt costs. So it's built in there. We don't ever really want to use it, but it is there for us to use if we have to. So that's really what that is. It's just a snapshot of my budget.
So, for those coming school years, it still has the same millage rate as where we're at now?
Right, I just haven't changed that. That will change. So when you see the final budget, it'll all be
So these numbers here are reflective
of the new budget.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably an oversight, just the last minute trying to get it from them, I guess. But you're right, that everything that's shown there is what I just presented to you and what is on the current budget. So the next big topic that I have is the 5-year projection. I have it here, I have my assumptions. It's really, I mean, how do we want to do it? I really am going to go in depth with it the next meeting, the next financial meeting. So what I thought I could do is I can give you my 5-year projections. I have all my assumptions on there of what I use, and then that'll give you an opportunity to digest it, go through it, give over the sticker shock of it, and then come back with questions so that we can then put it up on the screen. And this is what we did last year. We were able to have, we'll put it up on the screen and we will show you different scenarios that we have. And basically when you look at it, you can't really look at that last number. Because it's always going to be worst case scenario if we do nothing, if we don't increase the millage rate, if we don't have retirement, if we don't try to cut costs or find revenue sources. So it's always going to be that worst case scenario. So that's where I don't want you to look at and, this is terrible. Because what we really are concerned at is the next couple of years. Because every year, our goal is when we look at the 5-year plan, there's a section that says impact to fund balance. So when you see that number starting to get into the negatives, that's a sign to us as administrators, we have to do something. We have to do everything that we can to make that the smallest amount of number, or lowest number, so that we don't and have to worry about the taxpayers having to fund different things. So that's what I mean. There's so much that we will go through. I will dig it down on it, ask questions about it. And as I've told you guys before, if you ever have any questions, call me, email me. I have everything. I'm just showing you that cover sheet of it. All of the details of everything that I do is on the back side of it, but that's where I gave you the assumptions. So, after this, I'll help you guys all out with it, and then any questions on that?
You gotta show us the budget projections.
Do you want it now?
I think we all want it.
I'm not gonna put it up on here.
We don't have it here.
No, I have it here.
Okay.
I'll give it. You want to see it?
Especially if we've got several new people.
Right.
It's important, yeah.
So if I could say just one thing while you're passing that out, you know, at the last meeting, I went to the Capitol for to promote public school education and funding, and I have a paper that you can make copies of, but you know, it's really important for us to talk to our local officials, our elected officials, because if the budget passes how Governor Shapiro wants this year, that's potentially what they're looking at is potentially $339,000 more towards Carlington. Example, tax equity supplement, basic education increase, special education increase, and help with cyber charter school reform stuff. So like, it's really important for us to be calling we're in a very unique position. We have 4 elected officials that represent us, where most districts only have 2, to be reaching out to them so that these numbers like that Keith gave us for the next 5 years can change if we're advocating for more funding, adequate funding for schools. We're in the lower half of schools that need adequacy funding. So like, we're not being funded how we should be when you look at adequacy and equitable funding. But it's, I mean, $339,000 sounds like a small number, but that's like, it's a huge number. So talking and getting the budget passed on time is like,
And that's why there are so many different opportunities, and that's why when I said, when you look at this number, the numbers are so inflated that I don't want you to think that this is the end all be all. It's not. And honestly, if you can see the history on it, we've been pretty close about, you know, where we've been as far as in the past of hitting our fund balance. You know, we had the opportunity to gain increase our fund balance, you know, pre-COVID, just about at COVID. And it's given us the opportunity to do different things that we've been able to do, build that fund balance to be able to weather any different storms.
Will you walk us through what you want us to look at? And
So
what
basically, so basically what you're wanting to look at is so if you see like the beginning fund balance, the total revenue, total expenditures, a lot of that is like the summary that I've given you. So these are numbers that are straight. The ones in the green to the left of the blue, or in the clear, those are actual historical numbers. So those are numbers that we have are known. So those are what we use as a reference for when we come up with some of our percentages that we use in our assumptions. But I think what it is, it's a good thing to show you that, you know, you might see a high number at the end, but in reality, we're pretty much hitting our budget every single year. We're able to hit our budget pretty much every year. So when you're looking at this, the orange line that says change in fund balance, that's the most important line to us as administrators, because that is where we see the shortfall from revenues to expenditures. So that's where, as I spoke a little bit earlier, to say, you know, we need to look at how can we make that number less, make it zero, make it positive, by looking for different funding sources, looking at different items that are going to be able to allow us to cut, you know, some costs without cutting the program. So that's really what I want you to look at, because when you look at the ending fund balance, if you look at that, like I said, that has nothing happening to it at all. It's strictly going on the assumption that I have given to you. So that's really what I want you to see. And the next thing too is,
Before you move on, so sorry, I'm not sure you have something.
no, go ahead.
Real quick, so just like everybody, so you're looking at the blue vertical column.
That's
That's the budget for next year, proposed budget for next year.
Right.
Everything to the left of that is what actually happened in the past. Everything to the right of that is what might happen. Can you characterize at a high level what sort of assumptions you use to plan out that, what might happen?
So on the assumption sheet that I have to you, so real estate growth, I put it 0% growth. It's something that I think that, you know, we can see that the growth is actually going down, but we're pretty landlocked here in the district. So just to be safe, I just do the zero. The current tax collection rate, we constantly look at that. That's constantly looked at every year to see how much did we actually collect from based on what we did, so that it gets adjustment. And then earnings on delinquent real estate, a lot of those are historical, and also we look at what the labor guides say of what is a pretty good percentage for moving forward. So there are some things in here that, like state subsidies, we know that we're always going to be flat funded. So we're always going to keep it flat, and then historically we have an idea of how much we're going to spend in it. So we might move it up a little bit on a percentage of based on what we know that's going to happen. Federal is usually always flat funded. So you'll see in the background of this budget, you'll see I have all these percentages in there drawn on this. But also, not only do we have the assumptions, but we have the numbers. I have the piece of numbers that I know. I have the percentages we know from the contracts. You know, we know what the increases. So there are things, when I have a known, I will fill those knowns in on across that we know what that thing's going to be. So as much as possible, I'd like to put as much known in there so that it is as accurate as possible, and then we go through with these assumptions. So I mean, it's really a lot of it is based on trend, you know, historical, looking at back historical to get a percentage, and really it's been pretty accurate. It hasn't been terribly off on, you know, the adjustments. So that's where I have all those assumptions. So like I said, there's two parts of this workbook that feed into this number here. And then the last thing I wanted to show you, and this is where we will work with, you know, and a lot of the older board members have seen this before, is if you see the percentage millage change, so if you see that yellow line, the second one from the bottom, that yellow line is where we put in what potential tax increases. So as you see, right now I have a 4.4% because this is a reflection of our proposed budget. So what we can do is I can move forward and put, you know, say, okay, we put 4.4 here, nothing here, 4.4 here, and see how it affects the budget at the end. And we can do that. And really what it is a good tool for myself too, is that if I know that we can't go higher than 4%, let's say, year to year, if it's gonna take me 5, 6, 7% increases to get us to where we're still within that comfort range at the end of 5 years, then we know there's something that we really have to work on. Right now, I don't see that issue. We're okay for right now. But like I said, next meeting, we will go through it. I will show you the assumptions. I'll show you how it works. It's just that I don't have it out right here, so, but it's something that we can spend plenty of time on. But I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity to see this, that we do have it, that it is part of our budget. And that we're not just worried about next year, we're worried about 5 years out, and that's how it's always been since I've been here. That's the 5-year projection. Any other questions on it? Like I said,
Keith, to talk about reassessment countywide, would that help the school district or not?
it all depends.
Proposed.
It depends.
Let me jump in on that one. There is a countywide reassessment, George. It has to be revenue neutral in the first year. Now, so in the first year, it shouldn't hurt or it shouldn't help. It should be just neutral.
Okay.
So, you know, whatever the assessments go up, the millage has to go down, so it balances. Now, in future years, depending upon the economy, et cetera, it could very well help.
Help us.
It could help, yeah. Now, if you get too far out, like they did this time, with, you know, going from 2012 to 2026, it's gonna flip. I mean, you know, the curve is gonna go up, max out, then the common level ratio is gonna start coming back into play. That may be 10 years from now, that may be 5 years from now, it might be 50 years from now. Not full under 50, but, you know, the longer they don't reassess, the worse that then becomes because the common level ratio goes down. Now, what they're talking about right now in the county is every 3 years. So revenue neutral, 2 years in between, you're not gonna get a whole lot of fluctuation. At least that's their theory. Whether or not that will happen or not, I don't know. But hopefully that kind of sums up the, you know, what happens with the reassessment. And that's assuming that it passes. This is not statewide. This is just our county saying this is what they're proposing. So, you know, there is still the state could come in and do something else, or put something else into place. So far, there hasn't been any appetite for that apparently. I mean, did the math like 14 years ago that they did this. And it's a mess, there's no question about that. His job is really complicated, trying to figure out the common level ratio is down to 50.14 for this 26 assessments, and we'll get on lower for 27, if nothing else.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay?
And as I recall, the assessment in 2012, that's a pretty enormously expensive undertaking as well. And, you know, that's, so that was 13 years ago. So, I mean,
It's a hard thing to
it takes
predict
quite a
anyway,
while
either way.
to, you know, to actually get something like that going. Who knows if it exists, but to your point though, I think a lot of it still uses like 1968 real estate values, and they've got a formula based on that. Just as an example.
I don't know, at 58, I can't get back to.
Well,
I
60,
can't tell you this, but in 73, back in the 70s, district did a triennial, or the county did a triennial reassessment,
you know,
north, central, south. The taxpayers, this is open season for those kind of
you know,
lawsuits. In the early 70s, they brought action, Green Tree, brought actually, and said that was unconstitutional because it was not, uniform taxation. That's how we got the one assessment, and it's been around ever since. Now, whether somebody will attack the whole concept of every 3 years, because when one, it's, you got a base and two, that's different. The common level ratio balance it out, who knows? But, you know, so it's, if the county goes that direction, then it should be more uniform, but no way to predict it.
And on top of that, we still have the state that determines.
You know, counties, they haven't reassessed, I know, in Westmoreland hasn't reassessed since the seventies,
Right.
early seventies. And the millage is 150, I'm making that up.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about.
It varies from district to district. But they're all over 100 out in Westmoreland County, villages, but, you know, your common level ratio has the values 10-12%. Yeah. It's, I don't envy Keith on this part of it.
Question.
So, like I said, go ahead.
Just real quick, so for everybody else, you see the green horizontal line. Big picture, if you look at 26, 27 budget, roughly 40 million in expenditures, roughly 40 million in revenue. And then if you go to the right on the revenue side, so 39.5 million, go to the right, he's sort of flatlined, assuming virtually no increases in revenue. So we're not increasing taxes, everything's kind of flatlined. And then expenditures down 39.9 million, and then we've looked at sort of traditional increase rates. And that's what drives, out 5 years, it drives expenditures of 48 and revenue of 42, so big deficit. And the impact of that is that third green line, where in 3 years we're out of money. So
If we
if we don't raise taxes, so I don't
How do
think
you want to say if you don't raise taxes, if we don't make changes in our,
spending
spending or funding revenue?
correct. Like, so this is a scenario that I don't think anyone can deny that. But it's a exercise to help us kind of figure out what the numbers look like. And
Right, exactly, and it's a great tool for us to know, are we on track with our budget, or do we really, it hurts a crisis, honestly, what it does is, if we blindly went and said, we didn't look out past next year, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're $8 million in the hole, how are we gonna get out? We can't. So this is allowing us to be aware that if we don't do no action, this is what's going to possibly happen. So that's really what this tool is, and it's a pretty good tool, it really is.
What I'm seeing, the rate of expenditures on going from 5 years ago to 5 years in the future. But the revenue is projected to be less than what we have been gaining in the last 5 years.
Right, and that's the issue that we have, and that's always been the issue, and that has to go back to the state funding. The state funding has flatlined. There are items that we used to get reimbursements for instance, charter schools. We used to get a reimbursement, we used to get 50% of our costs back, we don't get that anymore. So you're right, and that drives the whole problem that most districts have with their budgeting, is that we don't have that availability, and we don't want to keep pushing it onto the taxpayers.
Yeah.
But, that's exactly 100%. And with the CLR, that's another added problem that we have. I can't assume that we're going to get more assessment value to draw more revenue, because we traditionally, right now, we're not. We're starting to lose every year. So it's, like I said, it's a good tool. It's not something to take religiously to bed to say, hey, this is it. But it's a good tool to allow us to know that we're on track. We can maintain.
one other quick point I want to make is on that language, this change in fund balance and then ending fund balance, where it shows in this hypothetical situation, if we don't raise taxes, we go negative very quickly, we're out of money. The state has regulations around, we can spend as much money as we want. We can spend virtually unlimited amount of money. We just don't have the ability to raise revenue to pay for it. So districts try to be a little conservative, because even if you get yourself in a hole by accident, you don't have the ability to just scramble out of it and raise taxes unilaterally. So Keith's been very cautious with us and board to say, we can't get in a situation where we spend a lot of money and use up our fund balance and then hope that we can just recoup it later if we don't have that flexibility, so. Joe, any other, yours are old?
Well, I think that the one thing, that as long as I've been on the board, has been true of a number of board members at the time, saying is that you project what your expenditures are. That doesn't mean you have to spend everything. I mean, we have contractual obligations, of course. You remember the big fight over the 250 or 350 pickup truck? Yeah, that was the idea, was the difference in costs. We're talking a few $1,000, but one board member had that in their prod. That was the point, is you don't have to spend something that just because it's budgeted. And it's good to bear in mind that while our assessed value is determined kind of our ability to raise taxes is governed by the state. So, this is something that, not to be too fine point on it, but the state government has been pushing responsibility for tax increases down to the level. And that's what they still have political willpower to, take their traditional, and when I say traditional, from the 70s and 80s, and their level of responsibility for the school levy. If they, it was, then they pass laws which are basically unfunded mandates, and
That's why we have to talk to our local legislators. We have to
I
advocate.
agree. I mean,
Tell them stories. That's what they said they want to hear, is they want to hear the stories.
but I've also talked to them candidly in like off the record conversations. They know exactly what's going on. They're not stupid. That's all.
All right, so June, we're going to take a look at this 5-year projection again. It'll be updated with the final budget numbers, and we'll do a deep dive into the final 26-27 budget. So like I said, take that, ask questions, and you see, like I said, you can look at the proposed final budget, but it's going to change. I guarantee it will change. So, take what you want from it. But I think if you have any questions, just, I have the backup, I have everything, so at any time, if you have questions, just call me, email me, talk about it in the board meeting, whatever you need to do it, so you can do this. So, that's June finance meeting, so as we, Fair said, budget changes, we continue after this is adopted today until the final adoption of June 16. It's going to be at the district website and all the school building offices, and then we plan on the final approval of the general fund budget on June 16th. That's what I have. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Billy. That completes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. Dr. Taylor, are there any people that have signed up to speak on agenda items tonight?
There are not.
There are not, okay. We will move on. Other items on our agenda tonight, approval of previous minutes, there are none, because we just had a meeting last time, so we'll have it next week though. Finance agreement, we do have items to approve tonight, which the big one is the budget, so. We have a budget and agreements. Do I have a motion to approve our Section E finance and agreements?
I'll second.
Move to second. Any questions or discussion? Yes.
I have some discussion for the proposed final budget.
Yep.
My thoughts, when it comes to sort of evaluating budgets and our wish to adopt them, I think it's valuable to have greater context in the decisions, in particular the context of what are the trade-offs when we go to make a decision. So with the current proposed, it's a 4.4% increase in our tax rate. And when I think about that, how it's gonna affect our community members, we have, people living on fixed incomes in our community, and the cost of living adjustment on Social Security was not 4.4% last year. So that means now their housing budget is gonna be a bigger portion of their expenses for the next year. I think about families that we have that are living, paycheck to paycheck, and how that's gonna impact their mortgage payments. And so to me, what I'd be interested in seeing is, what's the trade-off? If we're gonna do that, what are we gaining? If we were to not make that, what would we have to give up? But I think that's a valuable piece of context, is if we weren't gonna do this, how would we be negatively impacted? And I think that's valuable information when we make this decision.
Good point.
So that's what I think some of the things that Keith talked about that we're adding for next year, some of them are, I believe, state required. So we're having to add some positions to accommodate state requirements, so we may not have flexibility there. Other things are programs that we want to do because we think they're good for the kids. So we have to kind of look at that and break down what is necessary and required by the state. And we only have an option, and what are things that we think are good for the kids. But to your point, are awesome.
And I think also when it comes to, communicating this to community members, people don't like the taxes being raised, obviously, but if you say, okay, yes, we understand you're angry, but, when we look at everything that we have to spend versus what is optional, here is the optional thing that we would, have to give up in order to not do this tax increase. And when you give that context to the broader community, people can go, well, okay, I really didn't want to pay extra, but, maybe I do think it's worth paying that extra in order to preserve that certain program. So I think it's a valuable exercise to provide context to the decisions we're making.
Maybe you could shed light on that at our next meeting, where which of those things are.
Really, that's not too hard to do. We can definitely give you a list of things to say, we're doing this for wellness purposes, we're doing this for this reason. Yeah, we can do that.
When there's a tax increase, do we, by law, are we required from a communication perspective to notify the community members?
We publish our meeting results, and we kind of announce it, and you guys put something on Facebook. Our website, it just says, here's what our budget is, here's what the tax increase is, or here's no tax increase. Keith, is it possible next time to have a simple chart just showing the last 10 years? Have we raised taxes or have we frozen taxes this year?
That's always part of the final thing we do, yes.
Last 21 is the bottom.
But that's part of my final budget presentation, is when I go through and show what was our tax increases historically, and then, the tax implementations, if we raise taxes, this is how much it's going to cost median, that kind of. So, yes, I can do that. Yeah, I'll have everything ready. Basically what I'll show you and we discuss is basically what it'll be a little bit more in detail, but we can, tone it down for the final budget presentation that we always do.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
One other quick comment, on your point, the challenging thing I think for us is we have a student population that will go up and down, and one or two students and their needs, individual needs, could fluctuate by $250,000 or more. And how do we plan for that, and then how does the public understand that? And we don't want to call out individual people in the groups, but that.
Well, those are some of the things too that are mandated that we wouldn't really have a choice in any way.
Right.
So we wouldn't say oh, this is what we have to give up, but we couldn't give it up no matter what.
Right. But you get my point about
Yes.
that those, and as our mix changes, that creates challenges from a budget.
And honestly, historically, those are some of the costs that drives most of the tax increases, because, right now, we have, over the last couple of years, has toned down the budget to the point where we found that sweet spot that, we know that we could go there, but we're so close on that, that something like, what we have coming next year, we have identified, several students that are gonna need extra help. And all of a sudden, there's $200,000-$300,000 that we weren't expecting, so. I totally understand what you're saying and what you're getting at, and it's 100%, workable, and it makes sense, so. Yeah, we can come up with something.
Any other questions or comments on the motion on the table? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Any abstentions? If not, motion carries.
So we have 5 affirmative votes.
5 and 1. 5 and 1.
It would take 5 to pass it. Okay.
6 and 1. 6 and 1. 1, 2, 3,
7. So that's 6 and 1.
6 and 1, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't see Mary say anything.
Under section F personnel, I have a motion for the item number 1.
So moved.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any questions or comments? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Under section H, policy, I'll entertain a motion for items under section H. Brittany, you're very active tonight. Thank you for doing that. Any seconds for Brittany's motion? Thank you. Deal. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Any old business for any director? New business? Public, any open forum questions?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
It's about the budget. Like, when we approve a budget, like, how, like, top line or, like, in the weeds are, like, the line items that we're approving?
As far as,
Just like when we approve it, like, when we talked about, like, the numbering, where it's like the 1,000, like, are we approving just like, this is how much is going to the 1,000s, and then the administration divvies up between, like, the hundreds? Or do we go like, this is how much we approve for, like, this 1,100, this 1,100, and then, like, the tens, you guys divvy up, like, how in-depth?
no, it's pretty detailed. It's broken down by the function, which the other one is, and then the objects too. So everybody's budget, that when we go through, every administrator has a budget. We don't just say, you have this much money to spend. We make them go through and say, all right, we're gonna spend this much on travel, we're gonna spend this much on books, this much on supply. So we go pretty detailed with it, and the state is pretty detailed as far as when I have to put it into the system, I have to break it down for them, so it is pretty detailed.
But Director Smith, are you asking as far as on the board agenda, will it show that level of detail?
Oh, I guess that's a good question. I was gonna ask that. I didn't know what we were, like, literally approving.
No, you're literally approving, everything is broken down, and, like I said, we have a budget that we show exactly every administrator where every dime is going, and it all has to be in a function and an object. We can't just say, we're putting $1,000 or $10,000 in this function, but not have an object to it, so it won't. So we do break it down to that point. And we actually take it even steps further. We take it down to an administrator level, we take it down to a school level, elementary, so it's really, really detailed whenever, we break down that budget on our level. But reporting, yes, it is taken down to that, or that object.
Right, so next week we'll have more detail than we had today.
Not this week, but
Or next meeting, sorry. Next meeting we'll have more detail. The June meeting, we'll have more detail than we had today, and we'll approve it, but we're gonna approve a number. And then next year, as they spend it, it's the administration will approve, they might make some shifts and they might move things around. They gotta get the number and they'll send them the breakout to the state. But if it's $40 million, they may spend it slightly differently than what they originally envisioned. We'll have visibility into that, both at the budget level at the beginning and then every month.
every month, and that's exactly it. When you look at the budget financials that I put out, the treasurer's report, it does break it down by function and object, and how much we budgeted, how much we spent that period, and how much we spent the year, and how much is left. So it is in there, and at any time I have detail behind all that, so, we can go that step further. It's just that that's the level that, it's required for treasurer's report to let the board know that, this is gonna let you see it at a high level, which is, we're administrating it, we're showing it, we're doing it, and then for you to, you want more of the high level. You don't need to be, hey, we're gonna spend, $60 on supplies for buying this at this school and $20 over here. We have that, and we know that, but it's not something we don't want to.
Yes, thank you.
Can I go back to new business? The K-2 PSSA field trips. From my experience and speaking with a lot of parents, it was very successful. There were some positive feedback on ways to improve things, but for Carnegie Elementary students, it was not just from a knowledgeable game perspective, it was a life experience perspective that they obtained. What the kids were exposed to those 3 days was incredible.
And team, if I can add to that, as much as we preach, and you say this a lot, our kids are better off when they're in our building and we're interacting with their teachers and having that experience. It's often equally impactful to have them out in the world, seeing things that they don't always get to see. So it's a healthy balance of all the great stuff our teachers do and helping the kids back to the world and see what's out there. So I agree with you.
And the level of support the community provided, parents and family members to chaperone, the way they showed up and delivered was incredible. So
I'll take that. And Dr. Craig and Dr. Kelly, both of you guys, we talked about that last year, and you both said we want to do something different next year. Thank you both. That was huge. Yeah, I appreciate it. And that kind of feedback as well.
So I'm looking forward to seeing the survey results.
Oh, did it go to the volunteers? The survey?
We didn't push it out yet.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. We're also just taking a look at total cost and impact too, as far as everything we did, just for budgetary purposes.
We should measure the cost, but I think your point is to measure the cost things that would be, the ROI was huge for the kids. So money well spent. As an engagement for the parents.
It was $1.5 million.
1.5 million, very well spent. Very well spent.
Well done, well done. Any other open forum questions for the board?
I have a what-if question. What if on June 16th, we just barely have a quorum of 5, and 3 of us vote against the budget?
You have to have 5 to pass it.
What?
You have to have 5 affirmative to pass it.
So,
If only 5 are here and not all 5 vote yes, the budget fails.
and then what happens?
We have until
You'll
June
be
30th.
reading a lot more.
We must pass our budget by June 30th. Unlike the state that has a fictitious deadline, we have to hit ours by June 30th, and Keith has to have it submitted to the state.
I mean, really, I realize you 5 are here, but it's really important that all 9 be here if at all possible. Because it does take 5
For it to
affirmative
pass.
votes, and it's the biggest number you're gonna pass all year, all year long. It's not gonna get any bigger than this.
George, we anticipate having all 9 here, at least, I don't know if anybody here not able to, but we had some people traveling for work.
Well, I understand. I'm just saying, it's never happened before in my tenure.
It's not happened here.
What?
It's happened
Yeah.
other places.
So,
You just
so
have
after
to
the
vote, you
16th,
find
we have a
out.
meeting on the 17th, 18th, 19th.
Basically until we.
Theoretically.
Yeah, because I have the same,
Then you can't go.
the same issues as Reese does with the people who are on fixed incomes. I walked into one house in particular where the carpeting was threadbare because he couldn't afford our taxes. Whew.
Start talking
That's
to
it.
your state officials to increase funding to school districts. I mean, your state and federal funding needs to increase to adequately fund schools so the burden does not fall on the taxpayers. But unfortunately in Pennsylvania, the burden falls on taxpayers.
Yes.
So start talking to your state officials and federal officials about it. Take a group of seniors. Next year, come with me in May.
And as you said, we have an advantage over other school districts because we have 4 representatives in Harrisburg. So we have double the punch.
That is correct.
Good point. Any other open forum questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye. Aye.